This program contains dramatizations of real people and events. Some names have been changed. This program is for mature audiences only. It contains graphic images which may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. He's the worst serial killer in U.S. history. This is the untold story of two gifted psychics who helped police nab him.
I could smell the death smell. The smell is unmistakable.
In New Jersey, one abduction follows another. To find the kidnapper, a psychic tries to connect with each victim.
I was out of my body and she was in my body. And I let her speak through me.
When clues are scarce and answers elusive, investigators sometimes turn to a psychic witness. Des Plaines, Illinois, a middle-class suburb a half-hour outside Chicago. On December 11, 1978, Margaret Billows stops off at a local drugstore. Tonight's a special night for the Billows family. It's Margaret's birthday, and everything's ready for the party. Margaret just has to pick up her 15-year-old son, Tommy, who works at the drugstore.
Hey, Mom.
Oh, hi.
Hi, honey. You put this behind the car for me?
Yeah, almost ready to go?
No, I have to go talk to a...
Tommy wants to speak with a contractor about a summer job on a construction crew.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Wait a second. You know what? Forget this.
The man is waiting in the parking lot.
Me too, love. I'll just take a look around.
All right, that's fine.
But Tommy doesn't return,
What time do you have?
and his mother grows worried. Outside, no sign of her son or the contractor. Tommy Billows simply stepped outside and vanished. The Billows family scours the area. They find nothing. That night, they file a missing persons report. In the morning, the missing persons report goes to Detective Lieutenant Joseph Kozenzak.
The report came into our office regarding a missing 15-year-old boy from the Des Plaines area.
Teenager from Des Plaines Department.
Kozenzak sees where Tommy goes to school.
That's correct.
My son was also a student at the same high school. So that caught my eye right away, and I just took an intense interest in this missing persons case.
Des Plaines detectives interview Tommy's boss to ask about the man Tommy went to meet.
Suppose came back. Did you...
They had a contractor come into their drugstore to give them an estimate for work regarding their shelves and displays.
The man left shortly before Tommy disappeared. The owner only knows the man's first name, John, and a phone number. It'll take some time to get a background check, starting with just a number.
Ready?
No one believes Tommy would run away. He's a good student and athlete with a love of photography.
This was a young man who was dedicated. He had goals. He wanted to go to college. He wanted to earn money to set up a dark room for himself. He was focused. He wasn't somebody that would feel was involved in any kind of illicit activity such as drugs or other things that would take him away from the house unexpectedly.
Police run the check on the contractor through his phone number and learn he's got a record, an ominous one. He served time for sexual assault in Iowa. His victim, a teenage boy.
Okay, what you need to do is check with the authorities.
His name, John Wayne Gacy.
And literally, when that information came over the phone, the hair on the back of our necks just stood up because we were like dumbfounded that here we had this guy. He was one of the last people supposedly talking to this young man, and now he's a sex offender. I decided that we would go to Gacy's house to talk to Gacy.
Gacy?
Yes.
Gacy lives in Norwich, Illinois, just minutes from the parking lot where Tommy disappeared.
No, but you can come in if you want.
We'd like to do that, thank you.
Yeah. You,
Okay, Mr. Gacy?
I told him he was seen talking to the boy, and he vehemently denied it. He said, whoever you're talking to is lying. There's no way.
Gacy says he's too busy to come down to police headquarters right now.
He said when he finished up all of his business, he would call me, and then he would drive over to the station by himself.
Without a warrant, police can't force him to come in.
By being hesitant, he was just, I had this sense of him being deceitful.
The next day,
came in there.
Gacy shows up for questioning and learns police have a search warrant for his house.
He became very belligerent. When I asked him for the keys, I said, John, we need your keys, or you're going to lose your front door. We're going into your house one way or the other. We need your keys.
Take the keys.
Sir?
Gacy's home contains some chilling items. A bag of clothes, young men's sizes, too small for Gacy. A high school ring from Tommy Billow's school, but with the initials JS. Driver's licenses, none of them Gacy's. Detectives also find a receipt for film developing from the drugstore where Tommy works. They'll run the names from the IDs through missing persons.
Detective.
We found that the whole floor of the closet was, in fact, a trap door leading to a crawl space area under Gacy's house.
I'm gonna go get my flashlight.
The perfect place to hide a body. But there's no sign of fresh digging. Officers note the dirt's coated with a white powdery substance, lime.
A lot of people do spread lime over the surface of the dirt floor to keep the dampness down.
No proof of any crime.
We knew that when we arrived back at police headquarters, we'd have to release John Wayne Gacy from custody, because there just wasn't enough there.
But Kozenzak won't give up.
The first thing I did was set up a surveillance. I assigned 2 detectives to sit out down the street from his residence, keep an eye on the house and let us know what's going on.
Days pass, with police no closer to an arrest. Then a colleague suggests that Kozenzak consult a local psychic.
I was skeptical, to say the least. I asked him who the lady was, and he said her name was Carol Broman.
And the minute he walked in the door, I knew I had trouble.
She essentially looked at me and said, "You don't believe in this stuff, do you?"
But the detective's willing to try anything to find Tommy.
I asked Lieutenant Kozenczak to bring me items that belonged to the young missing boy.
Broman can read people through an object they've touched that's important to them.
He's no longer alive. He's no longer with us. It's almost like an electrical thing. I can't explain it any better. You pick up a connection. It's like an energy coming from that individual, but then it expands and it gives you all kinds of information. When I picked up the camera, the first thing I felt was fear. Terrible fear, torture. And then the pictures in my head. I don't think I've ever felt such terror, ever in my life.
Carol feels Tommy Billows was murdered, and he's not the first.
I turned to him and I said, "There's bodies everywhere." And he said, "What?" And I said, "There's bodies everywhere."
She said, "They'll be buried together. They're buried in an ark." Thoughts were just racing through my head as to what is, I don't have any more information about any other missing people here. And what is she talking about?
I could smell death. The smell is unmistakable.
Carol Broman
No
sees the
longer.
detective's worst fear, a serial killer on the loose.
He's gone.
She sees John Wayne Gacy and his buried secrets that will shock an entire nation. In 1978, Illinois detectives ask psychic Carol Broman for help in the search for Tommy Billows.
What, you want my keys?
Their
Fine,
suspect,
here. Take
a
the
man
keys.
named John Wayne Gacy.
Do whatever you want. You're not gonna find anything.
There's a great deal of suffering.
Carol believes Tommy has been killed, along with many others. Her vision surprises Detective Joe Kozenczak.
We had absolutely no idea about multiple victims in this case. And yet she's the one who brought that to our attention.
The detective's primary concern is finding Tommy. He brings a map of Cook County for Carol to read.
Lake Michigan. I'm talking.
She sees water, but can't sense Tommy anywhere on the map.
I saw the letter M. I thought it was the name of a business, or the part of the name of a business.
Gacy's van for his construction business has a large M painted on it. Carol also sees construction sites. The visions come with intense pain.
It's a very dark I kept telling him throughout these interviews I wanted to stop because it was just too much. Because now I was beginning to pick up the way some of the others had died, the feelings that they had had, absolute terror and pain. I don't like being psychic. I don't like what it does to you. I don't like knowing what happens to people. It was a very bad death, and I really don't want to talk about it.
Kozenczak encourages Carol. They must find Tommy.
Carol Broman continued on with a description of who she felt the killer was, probably in his early 40s, was heavy set. He had a scar on his little finger.
Gacy's fingerprint records show a match.
You could see a scar on his little finger, and it essentially just confirmed the information that Carol had previously given to us.
Familiar to you?
It's not just Carol's vision that implicates Gacy. The photo receipt found at Gacy's house links him to Tommy.
On the night that the boy went missing, a young girl was working the register. She had been to a high school prom. She wanted to process the photos. So she wrote her own order out. and she tore the receipt off. And she put it into the pocket of a coat she was wearing.
But the coat belonged to Tommy. He lent it to her earlier that day, and she returned it, forgetting her receipt.
And mysteriously, all of a sudden, this photo receipt winds up in the garbage can of Gacy's residence. It essentially confirmed the fact that the young boy had been inside of his house.
The class ring is also incriminating, traced to a young man gone missing the year before. IDs found at the house belonged to various young men. Some had worked for Gacy. All had disappeared. Then police discover more during a strange encounter. Gacy brazenly invites the surveillance team in for breakfast.
Gacy felt he was smarter than the police and that this was just a big con game he was pulling.
We got some apple pie. Detective.
Detectives note a strange smell emanating from an air vent.
Detective, it's over here, come on.
They drove back to the headquarters and came to me and said, "Lieutenant, there's something going on in this guy's crawl space. It smells like the morgue."
Detectives immediately execute a second search warrant. This time, the smell is horrendous. Gacy had flooded the crawl space, though the water had since receded.
What he essentially did is, by flooding the crawl space, he broke the seal of the ground.
Ghosts long buried now surface.
So, Mr. Gacy,
Once again in custody, Gacy makes a shocking confession that he killed not only Tommy Billows, but dozens of young men over a 6-year period.
Ran out of space.
He specifically talked about how he enticed him to come to his house, how he tricked him into handcuffs, and how he murdered him.
Carol predicted the victims were buried in an ark.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The bodies were all buried in somewhat of an arch around the interior foundation of Gacy's residence. Carol was accurate. Her initial statement to us about having multiple victims had come true.
Investigators dig up a stunning 29 bodies on Gacy's property.
Cook County Police and the medical examiner were taking bodies out of his basement. And I remember being kind of overwhelmed and wishing it wasn't true.
Reporter Todd Wessel of the Des Plaines Journal and Topics.
The community reaction was one of shock and disbelief. John Wayne Gacy's reputation was a happy-go-lucky guy. He had a construction business, did clowning on the side. People thought he was a nice guy.
After identifying the bodies, investigators realize a sad truth.
Joe called not long after that and said, "Did I see it on television?" I said, "Yes, I did."
The detective explains they didn't find Tommy's body, only his coat hidden inside a wall.
and unfortunately,
Mr. and Mrs. Billows want their son back.
We've done everything we can.
She told me she had just read an article about a lady who helps people find their missing kids. And she asked if I would see if she could come to Chicago to help look for her son. And I thought, yeah, I'd be glad to do that.
Now a believer, Kozenzak contacts psychic Dorothy Allsion.
For 1 week, Dorothy Allsion stayed in the Chicago area, and I went out with her every day in my car. And snowstorms kept coming and going. She said, you got to travel along some roads where you're going to find double letters of towns.
Crossing the Des Plaines River, Dorothy suddenly feels Tommy's presence nearby. But roads leading down to the riverbank are blocked by snow. Dorothy predicts a day in the spring when the roads are clear, the river no longer frozen.
She scribbled something on a piece of notepaper, and she said, "This is the day you're going to find this boy's body." And the date was April 9th. This was 4 months in advance. She was telling me the day I was going to find the body.
Detectives hope to find the young man sooner. And it looks like they might when more bodies begin to surface. Illinois police unearthed 29 bodies buried at the home of John Wayne Gacy. But his final victim, Tommy Billows, isn't there. All that remains, a jacket worn the day he disappeared. Once again, detectives turned to psychic Carol Broman.
It had been an awful experience, and I really didn't want to keep doing it, but I wanted to find the child's body.
She sees Tommy with Gacy,
No, please.
fighting for his life. But Gacy is too strong. Carol tries to focus on where Gacy took the body.
I knew that he had been taken away in the backseat of a car.
She sees a dark road, a boarded-up building, a gas station with old-fashioned pumps.
I was having impressions of Gacy driving a vehicle. He was perspiring, he was shaking. He was trying to find a place to unload this body.
Broman senses water, and her prediction proves accurate. In the months after Gacy's arrest, 3 more bodies surface along the banks of the Des Plaines and Illinois rivers. But still, no trace of Tommy Billows. April 9th, 1979. The day psychic Dorothy Allsion told Detective Joe Kozenzak about.
I was sitting in my office and my phone rang, and it was the sheriff's office in Grundy County, Illinois. And the lieutenant on the line said, you better get down here. We just found a body. We think it's that boy you're looking for. And then all of a sudden, I remembered the note in my folder, and I pulled the note out, and it said April 9th. That's probably one of the better examples of psychic ability that I've ever seen.
Kozenzak rides to the scene in neighboring Grundy County. He passes signs for towns with double letters, just as Dorothy Allsion predicted. He spots a boarded-up building and old gas pumps, seen by Carol Broman.
A lot of what she said was very, very accurate and was right on.
Carol said Tommy would not be found in Cook County.
He wasn't in Cook County at all. So I guess he had to give it to Carol.
And these boys.
She was correct in that sense, and the map of Cook County was irrelevant.
The body, found on the shoreline, was covered by snow for months. Dental records confirm what the psychics already know. It's Tommy Billows, Gacy's final victim.
Gacy took the body, wrapped it in a blanket, and transported the body 60 miles southwest of Chicago to the bridge over the Des Plaines River. And he stopped his car, grabbed the body, and he threw it over the bridge.
Everybody's life has pain, and none of us are immune to that. But there is some pain you cannot conceive of yourself ever living through. And that's, to me, what the Gacy case was all about.
In 1980, John Wayne Gacy is convicted of 33 counts of murder and sentenced to death. He is executed in 1994. Joe Kozenzak would not quit until he stopped John Wayne Gacy and worked with psychics to make sure he did. In New Jersey, police struggle with their own serial killer case. Desperate to stop a madman before more bodies pile up. Morris County, New Jersey, a sprawling patchwork of suburban towns west of New York City. Tuesday, November 23, 1982. High school senior Mandy Simpson gets off work at a local mall, ready for Thanksgiving vacation. No one sees her leave or hears her scream. An hour later, Mandy's mother is worried. Her daughter always comes straight home. She finds Mandy's car, the girl's purse and keys inside.
Mandy!
It can't be.
Mandy!
But it is. A canine unit immediately responds to the mall. The dog catches a scent, but the trail ends 2 parking spaces away. Mandy is gone. Soon, a psychic will join the search, revealing startling visions of a horrific crime. Just before Thanksgiving, 1982, high school senior Mandy Simpson disappears after work at a New Jersey mall. Parsippany Police Detective Captain Jim Moore opens a missing persons case.
We first try to establish a pattern of how the person was living, and start doing a canvas of all the people that the missing person knew.
Police learn Mandy is a loving daughter, a model student.
You can try that, can't you?
Quiet, well-liked, and active with her cheerleading squad. Mandy Simpson is no runaway.
5, 6, 7, 8.
The following day, a canvas was made of the shopping mall, and people were questioned about the evening before.
Out of the ordinary happened here?
Matter of fact, I did the other day. When I was
A
leaving,
woman
there was this real creepy
that
guy.
had been out in the parking lot
Here.
remembered seeing this individual with brown hair sitting in an older model Chevrolet, not too far away from where the victim's car was.
Something about him was scary. This was just before Mandy left work. But the woman didn't get a plate number. She provides a police sketch, but it doesn't produce an immediate suspect.
On something serious like this, you just constantly work on it. It's not uncommon to work 24 hours around the clock, especially when you suspect criminal activity. And a young, innocent girl like this.
Despite their efforts, police have nothing. 2 days later is Thanksgiving. For New Jersey psychic Nancy Orlen Weber, it begins as a normal holiday.
When I was little, I knew things before they would occur. I would think that the radio was on, I'd hear an announcement. My mother would come home from work and I'd say, "Oh, guess who's giving birth?" or "Guess who died?" And then she would go tell everybody and they'd go, "Millie, you're crazy." And then 2 weeks later, it would occur. I'd never know how to turn it on or off. I had no control over it.
Nancy has learned to expect the unexpected, like the Mandy Simpson case.
Hello?
I received a call from this woman who briefly had met me before. She said, "My daughter's girlfriend is missing. Can you see anything? Can you tell me anything? Is she okay?" I immediately got visions, and they were visions that I attempted to push back in my mind because they were horrible. And these were flashes that happened in milliseconds.
Too fast to make out a person or place. Just a name. Mandy.
Yes. I didn't know where. I couldn't tell. But I immediately saw it as an abduction in my mind. I also saw some pretty horrific images in my mind of a victim tortured, raped, killed, and put in a water tank.
But before Nancy can contact police, everyone's worst fear comes true. A resident in nearby Randolph Township finds a body.
It was an old cement water tank. I don't know exactly what it was used for, but it had been abandoned over the years and was no longer in use, but there was water inside. And she was inside the center one. She was stabbed several times.
But investigators find no weapon, nothing to lead to a suspect. The Morris County Medical Examiner confirms it's Mandy Simpson. Defensive wounds reveal Mandy fought for her life. She was sexually assaulted, then bled to death, stabbed multiple times with a hunting knife. Police withhold key details to separate valid tips from bad ones.
We did receive some phone calls with some tips, but none of them were panning out, and we really didn't have a direction to go in at that time.
Then Nancy meets with an old friend, Detective Bill Hughes.
And I mentioned it to him. I said, "Bill, why did the newspapers lie about the victim?"
From another police department, Hughes isn't part of the investigation.
It doesn't even talk about the bruises.
I didn't know what she was talking about. I thought all the facts had been laid out in the case.
And I said, "Well, she was raped, she was tortured horribly. And she was naked. She wasn't fully clothed."
They weren't there.
But Nancy doesn't know who did it, and her information is added to a long list of tips, including the sighting of a man with brown hair in an older model Chevrolet. Patrol officers keep an eye out for the car. They stop several men who resemble the vague description in older Chevys. But if DMV papers are in order and there's no visible evidence to justify a search, police have to let them go.
People living in the neighboring towns were getting nervous and wondering how long this was going to go on before we could come up with some answers. And then all of a sudden we had a second victim.
December 5th, 1982. 2 weeks after Mandy Simpson's murder. Another car, abandoned on a dark road in Morris County. Once again, a purse left on the seat, keys in the ignition, and the driver nowhere in sight. About the same time, at a rest stop on nearby Interstate 80, a trucker tries to get some rest.
He hears banging on his door, and when he looks out, he hears this woman, "Help me, please help me." She's been stabbed in the chest and she's bleeding to death.
And then he got on his CB and he started hollering for help.
The woman's fading fast. The shadowy assailant has struck again.
I knew he would hurt again. I knew he would try to kill someone again.
This could be their first big break in the case, if the victim survives. 3 weeks after the murder of Mandy Simpson, 20-year-old Tina Finnegan fights for her life after being stabbed. But Tina dies en route to the hospital. Police have to inform yet another young woman's parents that their daughter has been murdered. With no witnesses, investigators need evidence to find the killer. Crime scene technicians recover a palm print from Tina's car. But it's of little help until they find a suspect. They also retrieve a tire impression. Again, only useful if they have a suspect's car to compare it to. The trucker recalls seeing a blue or green 60s-era Chevy Impala driving off. It matches the one seen near Mandy Simpson's car. But again, no plates. The community is terrified at the thought of a knife-wielding serial killer among them, according to Captain Jim Moore.
We don't usually have this type of a crime, so it was weighing pretty heavy on a lot of people. A lot of the women were afraid to go out by themselves.
New Jersey State Police issue a be on the lookout for a blue or green late 60s Chevrolet Impala. Officers stop any car close to the description. One man stopped had been pulled over before.
How are you doing today, sir? All right.
But with no bloodstains or suspicious behavior, police have no probable cause to search. The frustrating truth: the killer could be driving by them every day. The Morris County prosecutor calls a special task force meeting. In attendance, state and local police from across the county.
At the task force, Detective Bill Hughes and I hooked up together as a team. And we were trying to establish some leads in the case. Hughes said to me, he had this woman that he knew that had helped work on some of their cases, and she was pretty good. I said, well, what do you mean, this woman? He says, well, she's a psychic. What do you feel about that? I was a little skeptical, probably even more than a little skeptical, but I'm willing to take a chance. I said to myself, keep an open mind because it could be true and maybe we can use it.
Nancy relates her impressions of the Mandy Simpson case, telling them information about the attack not released to the press. They agree to work together.
Nancy likes to go by the scenes of the crimes. You know, she likes to drive around. She just doesn't sit in a room and think up stuff. She's got to go out and be hands-on. We all piled into my car, and we told Nancy that we were going to take her by some of the crime scenes, but we weren't going to tell her where exactly what had happened. We wanted her to tell us.
At the shopping mall parking lot, Nancy identifies the very space where Mandy Simpson parked.
She started to describe things that the guy had been sitting in the parking lot for quite a while, waiting for his victim. She gave us a description of the man that had been involved, of the car that was involved.
Everything she says matches what they know so far. Next, the detectives take her to the area where Mandy's body was found. She asks to go it alone.
Nancy went right to the place where the first victim was left. She went right to that spot. It was amazing. She gets into a zone She actually feels what the victim was going through at the time. It's almost like she puts herself in the other person's mind as the crime's being committed.
Nancy has had visions before, but this time, she becomes the victim.
I reenacted her torture. I saw a knife, I saw him cutting her, and I saw him as if I was out of my body and she was in my body.
It's a painful time for Nancy. She's channeling a terrified girl who knows she's about to die.
It's very intense. This is service you do for the victim. To become the victim, to give some relief to the terror and fear by simply being with them in their pain and terror. Just like anybody who is suffering and somebody's holding their hand. I was observing a killer.
Then she sees more.
I don't know how I got his name. And that probably will always remain a mystery to me. I told them I felt a man named James. Last name began with a K, ended with an ICH kind of sound. Blah, blah, itch. I said it's several syllables. Polish descent.
Nancy also feels the suspect has lived in Florida.
It's very eerie. You can actually get a picture of exactly what's going on. You're sitting there trying to write notes down, keep notes, and watch what she's doing at the same time. And it's quite a distraction, you know. It's because it's fascinating to watch her work.
They arrive at the Tina Finnegan crime scene.
She knew exactly where the car was run off the road. There's no way she could have known that.
He pulled her out of the car.
It is very much like watching a film sometimes. And sometimes it's like watching little clips of a film, tiny little pieces.
Afraid, she was so afraid.
Tina Finnegan, like Mandy, did not give up without a fight.
Nancy proceeded to describe exactly how the crime happened and how the victim was making a lot of noise. She was fighting with him. So he ended up stabbing her in the chest and taking off.
Usually there is a seed in me of one image, a feeling, that is a seed that starts growing if I cultivate it. And working with the police helps me cultivate it.
I see him.
As Nancy pieces the puzzle together, she sees more details of the suspect.
Came from this area in Morris County, lived around here, grew up here.
She senses a previous arrest down south.
Been in Florida in a jail for murder. Wow. Parole board let him out. Don't ask me why.
Get on your feet.
Nancy thinks the man is now back in Morris County and works at an auto garage. They must find him.
We knew we were dealing with somebody who was going to kill until he got stopped.
So far, the serial killer has eluded police, but an unusual confrontation with a psychic will change his luck forever. Psychic Nancy Orlen Weber tries to help New Jersey police find a serial killer.
I see him.
Detectives are eager to share Nancy's findings at the next task force meeting.
Excuse me, who is this?
But they don't get far. Some officials in charge of the case balk at the notion of a psychic's involvement.
It's very tough, I think, for police who have to be very linear in their function. Just the facts, man, you know? To work with a psychic.
What was that all about?
She doesn't have a
Nancy gets turned away.
I was quite surprised because I felt that Nancy had information to give. Whether it was good or bad, it was a lead, something that we could work on.
Determined to do what she can, Nancy calls on her students, whom she's been working with, to develop their own psychic abilities.
It's the only time I've ever talked about a case I'm working on with anybody except police. I said, I need your help on this.
For you to get this back.
They team up, praying for spiritual guidance to exert some influence on the killer.
I'd like for you to feel the terror
give back to James Cud, blah, blah, itch. And that's how I said it, the pain that he has caused. Let him feel what he's done to women. Let it stop. Let him get it. And the next day, I got a call from Jimmy Moore saying, Nancy, what did you do?
Moore explains that the night before, a local man called 911 and was rushed to an area hospital.
It's sore, isn't it?
Yep.
The man's name is James Kodadich.
Kodadich had called 911, asked for police assistance, and when they got to his house, he was showing a stab wound to his lower back.
Let him feel what he's done to women.
The two victims had been stabbed. It appears his wound is self-inflicted. Investigators notice he resembles the police sketch. Kodadich tells a muddled tale about a crazed motorist who ran him off the road, then stabbed him. He offers that the attacker fits the description of the guy who killed those two girls.
He was feeling the heat. He's trying to pass himself off as a victim, trying to deflect a little bit of attention from himself.
It has the opposite effect. Investigators would have needed a warrant to search the car of Kodadich, the suspect. But with Kodadich, the alleged crime victim, no warrant is necessary. Technicians find Mandy Simpson's blood and hair in the car, as well as fibers from Tina Finnegan's jacket. The tread on his tires matches tracks found near Tina's car. As Nancy Orlen Weber predicted, Kodadich has killed before, twice in Florida. Released on good behavior, he'd recently moved back to Morris County and worked at a gas station.
Everything that Nancy told me, I made notes with. And when the case was over and I was able to sit down and review, she was dead on.
Florida.
Nancy made a believer out of me, and I wouldn't hesitate to use a psychic in another situation in the future.
I wasn't too surprised. I figured that a lot of the information Nancy was coming up with was going to be verified when we caught this guy. Satisfaction, I think that's the word I should use.
A monster taken off the streets, perhaps because of Nancy's psychic plea.
I believe that we walk around with a myriad of information that we're not conscious of, but gets absorbed into us anyhow, and we use. I think that any information that I gave in that case moved some energy. Thoughts are very powerful and potent in this world.
Prosecutors charge James Kodadich with the kidnapping, assault, and murder of Mandy Simpson and the kidnapping and murder of Tina Finnegan. He's found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison. Carol Broman and Dorothy Allsion helped Chicago police work the biggest serial killer case in U.S. history. Nancy Orlen Weber helped New Jersey investigators stop another serial killer who was just getting started.
To the point that
3 psychics willing to endure terrible emotional pain to assist police any way they can.